tortilla company in Mexico, Mexican restaurant in my neighborhood. Mexican restaurant needs to buy tortillas from the tortilla company. When they buy the tortilla, who pays the tariff? Is it this or is it this?
Which product came over the national border?
But okay, so that's a choice that they make, but we agree the end result of one of those choices would be that the consumer bears the burden of the tax.
You're assuming the need by the consumer 100% of the time when you say that, and I'm not.
Government does not have the information of which jobs are more efficient to have here versus, which jobs are more efficient to offshore. It doesn't know what...
Government doesn't need to be trying to control that. They need to open up the fucking market and let the people decide.
This is what's great about the free market.
Well,
CTV is arguing for imposing on these free markets.
You're looking at me right now. Do you think that this continuing is somehow going to be improving the relationship moving forward, or do you think that you're just doing things to try to piss me off right now?
If you want to see more content like this, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing. It really helps with the algorithm. And make sure to check out the Discord and other social links in the description.
Anyway, Nonfon, you don't think tariffs are going to be good. Explain to me, let's kind of start off from here, right? What is what's like when you think of America, right? And everything going on around the world, and the issue of tariffs, right? How does that all play out in your mind as to who it is that you need to be watching out for most?
Well, when I think of America and our position in the world, I would say, there's broadly kind of two, in this new Cold War or whatever, there's kind of two camps. There's, America and sort of our allied democracies, and there's sort of the new axis with China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And we have, to varying degrees, the third world countries or whatever are sort of not aligned or only partly aligned with one of our camps. So I think the people we really have to watch out for, it's primarily China, to some extent Russia, although I think we're already basically watching out for them by funding Ukraine and doing sanctions on them, although I think we could be doing harsher sanctions. Other than that, I think those are really the people we have to watch out for. And I don't think tariffs are particularly are beneficial when placed in our allies. And I don't even really think tariffs are particularly the best thing to do on certain countries like China or North Korea. I think there are other measures that you should do in addition to tariffs that I think you should do.
What is the purpose of a tariff?
The purpose of a tariff usually is to try to bring some protected industry, keep it at home, right? So if we want steel jobs to be at home,
that's not the purpose.
Okay.
Of a tariff.
Sure. What do you think they are?
The purpose, right, is for the government to put a cost for the manufactured good to cross the national border.
Well,
that's the whole purpose,
what it does,
reason. Correct? Huh?
Well, that's what a tariff does. It increases the cost of imports from foreign nations. The purpose of that...
Whoa. That cost is paid by the manufacturer. They can either choose to add that to the product that the consumer will have to pay on the other side or not.
I agree.
The tariff is paid by the manufacturer to the government for it to be allowed into the market, right?
I agree, yes.
Okay, good. We got a good start. So when you're looking at that, and have you listened to everything that Trump has said about how he's going to be implementing these things?
A lot of it, yeah.
What have you heard?
So I've heard he wants tariffs on basically most foreign goods, is what he has said. At least 10%, 60% in China, I think.
Essentially, goods that are not being manufactured in the United States by American manufacturers is the goods that will have the goods placed on them. Meaning that if there's a good that's only being made outside of the United States, there will not be a tariff placed on it to come inside. It's only products that are competing. Now, why do you think that he wants to do that?
Well, firstly, I don't think that's exactly what he said. Like, we have quotes, the 2024 GOP platform says specifically Republicans will support baseline tariffs on foreign
Okay,
goods, and that's a platform that
let
Trump
me
has
ask
claimed
this
of his
basic
own.
question. Let me ask this basic question. Do you think he's
Mhm.
going to be putting a tariff on video cards?
I think he wants to put tariffs on basically most things made in foreign nations. So video cards, I would assume a lot of them, yeah, he would
No,
be.
they're only being produced in Taiwan. That's why the whole conversation about Taiwan and microchip processing comes into play, is because they're being produced in Taiwan. So no,
Well,
Trump is not
I've
going to be
not seen
putting.
anything from Trump saying that he only wants to do it for
I
things that are exclusively
I
being.
can't pull it up for you right now specifically, and you can either A, believe me or not. But as I've been watching a lot of the campaign trail, I heard the man say it. So I
Okay,
know there's a recording out there of it somewhere.
well, I also know the 2024 Republican platform, which Trump has claimed as his own platform, says that Republicans will support baseline tariffs on foreign-made products. And I know on Trump's own website, his Agenda 47 says that he would support, quote, universal baseline tariffs on most foreign products. So
What do you think the baseline is? The baseline is what I just told you.
I think
You any better? Is it still
Whoa.
shitty?
Oh
I think
my
I fixed
god!
it.
Oh.
No,
I mean, you
no,
fixed
it's
it.
super loud. I'm sorry.
It's loud. You're good. Okay.
Wow,
All right, we did it.
That was so horrible.
I think the
turning you back
baseline.
down to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was horrible in my ears.
Sorry, I should be fixed now. Sorry about that. But
Yeah, I think the
I'll do some-
baseline
I-
refers
I-
to like a minimum amount is my understanding of like a minimum amount of like 10%. All goods or most foreign goods crossing the border will have a minimum baseline tax.
Right.
And CTV, if you happen to know what like a press conference or where he said that, I can look it up and fact check that as well.
The search rallies. You're gonna have to find. He was at one of his rallies. I don't remember if it was Michigan or what. But one of the rallies along the way the last couple of months, when he went into the detail of it, it was manufactured goods that are goods that are being manufactured outside of the United States that have manufacturers in the United States. Essentially, like, why do you think that the manufacturers, like, say, why would an American company move out of the United States to have those goods manufactured in another country?
Well, I will answer that, but first I just want to say I don't think I know a lot of what you're referring to. Like Trump has said, like, oh, these companies that are making cars in Mexico, I'm going to place like a 200% tariff on them. Him saying that does not preclude that he also wants to place tariffs on most foreign goods. I think he does want to place tariffs on, his words, most foreign goods. He just wants to place extra tariffs on specific companies that he thinks are offshoring. The reason I think they're manufacturing there basically has to do with comparative advantage. The opportunity cost of them producing those cars there is lower, so it makes sense for that country to specialize in producing cars, whereas it makes sense for the U.S. to specialize in other things because we're much more productive than those other countries.
So you're looking at the world from a globalist perspective.
Absolutely, I am. Yes, because I believe globalization generally maximizes welfare for the U.S. as well.
You can have globalization without having the globalist perspective, because globalization just means that everybody's working together. The United States Navy has been ensuring, free trade for a long ass time now, and
Yeah, I
will
think that's
continue to do
incredibly
so for
based.
the foreseeable future, right? So there is America's contribution to globalization. We maintain the seas, period. So whenever I look at trade agreements, right, those countries aren't having to pay X amount of dollars to make sure that the fucking Barbary pirates aren't fucking coming back, or that the Somali pirates aren't fucking, you know what I'm saying? So whenever you're looking at companies that are being able to operate freely and to be able to move their goods because of that, then whenever they're going over to foreign nations and they're exploiting labor, not paying workers as much, they don't have any of the protections. If they died, nobody gives a fuck. that kind of environment, and then they produce the vehicles or whatever it is over there, and then they bring it back over here, and they're able to undercut American manufacturers that have labor law protections and have all these things in place for the workers, minimum wage, you're going to pay them X, Y, and Z, right? Insurance, etc. And that's why the cost is higher, because the workers are more protected actually, and they're not being fucking whipped with a slave whip over here. And that's essentially the difference. So
firstly, just on the first point, like obviously, I think the U.S. Protects free trade for most of the world. I think that's a good thing. I think that's because we're by far the most powerful nation on earth, and I think that's a good thing for the U.S. This, to an extent, you could say, other countries benefit from this without paying for it, but I think it's still a net benefit from the U.S. And we do tax our own companies to help pay for it as well. We tax our own people, and we tax their companies that benefit from these imports.
That's what a tariff is, though, is a tax on the company.
Well, sure, but there are better and worse ways to tax people. For example, I don't think a wealth tax is a good tax.
It's not taxing the people, the consumer. It's taxing the company. Remember?
Well, the burden can be on the consumer, but...
And who makes that choice? The company does. So it's not the responsibility of the government. It's the responsibility of the company, because they're the ones passing the cost on.
Well, a lot of businesses can't afford to not pass the cost on, and it doesn't really matter if it's their choice if at the end of the day the consumer is still paying the burden of the tax. I was using the word people like just to refer to the general tax base. Like there are better and worse ways to tax a tax base. Obviously, like I don't think a wealth tax is a good tax, even though a wealth tax would raise revenue to finance our protection of the rest of the world's trade routes. I also reject the only reason that it's cheaper to manufacture in other countries is because they have slave labor or whatever. One, some countries just have natural advantages. We can only get certain, Saudi Arabia oil is a lot easier to extract than oil in other places, so it's cheaper to get there. Secondly, wages are determined in large part by productivity. This makes sense logically, and we have empirical evidence to support this notion. Low productivity places get paid less money, and their low productivity is compensated for by the fact that they get paid low wages. And then we also can make this moral argument that they're using slave labor or child labor or whatever. No one cares if they die. Well, that might be true, but no job is worse than a job, right? Like even these sweatshops, people their revealed preference for working in a sweatshop is that it is a net benefit to them to working in that sweatshop. A lot of countries have these sweatshops. It sucks. It's unfortunate that we should do things about it. I think the thing we do about it is free trade, because free trade is generally mutually beneficial and allows these countries to develop and get past that stage sooner. We have studies on this. Logically, we can see why free trade is going to increase productivity and increase growth. Increased productivity increases wages, and increased growth lets them grow out of that era of having sweatshops faster.
Okay, so let's five-hit this thing for a minute. How do you actually grow the wealth of a nation?
You produce and consume more.
Is it by let's grow the wealth of a nation. Give the government a bigger pocketbook per se, right? Is it by taxing the 1%, or is it by taxing the middle class? Which one do you think you're going to get more money out of?
Well, more money out of doesn't necessarily translate into growth. I would say it depends on the distribution of income. I would say you can probably get more money from taxing. It depends on how unequal the country is, I should say. If the country is really unequal, then you probably can get more money from taxing the 1%. But most of the time, most countries get their money from taxing the middle class. That's where the majority.
Well, if you can show me a country that can survive with only taxes on the 1% and not the middle class, then we've got a new economic model for everybody. But it doesn't happen that way.
To be clear, these are the reasons I oppose a wealth tax.
Right. So the way that the biggest way for the government's going to be able to get money is by taxing the middle class. Fair enough. Right now, the middle class can't afford what the government's doing. So it's got to get, the burden has to come off the middle class, and it's got to go somewhere. Where do you think it's going to go? Do you think that it should continue to be pushed on the middle class until they can't purchase the basic items that they need to be able to survive? And then the entire network that's keeping those seas free for everybody else?
Well, this is I have my...
Do you see how there's a crumbling from the inside that needs to be corrected?
Well, I do, but like this is gonna get so far out of the scope of like where I want to go because like I have my own views on like what is optimal policy.
We're still
like
talking about tariffs, which I consider to be a tax on the company before it brings a good into the country.
well, do you accept that tariffs are generally regressive taxes?
I accept that a tariff is generally a tax on the company. Its effect has everything to do with the company itself, the market that it's competing in, etc.
I mean, but okay.
Maybe we can talk about specifics. Like I think Trump did some tariffs on steel's first term. If I'm not wrong, I think the price of steel like increased very quickly in the short term, at least.
Well, that was because they took off a lot of the cheap Chinese steel that was being flooded into the market. And when they took that completely off the market, obviously prices are going to shoot up in the interim because there's not as much supply. Once that balances out, and especially when the quality's better, then the prices are going to balance back out because now there's a normalization in the market.
Well, here I have so it seems like we do accept that companies can pass on the burden of these taxes to consumers, right? I think you basically opened by stating as such, right?
The company can pass on whatever it wants to the consumer. Whether or not the consumer purchases it is the choice that they make.
Well, sure. So, we could easily imagine a hypothetical where the price of steel or, anything, the price of silverware is increased because of a 20% tariff, and the company selling silverware just increases prices by 20%. That in that case, the incidence of the tax would be on the consumer, right? They would bear the burden.
No, it's still on the company.
Well, no. So, who actually pays it?
It's still on the company.
No, who actually? No. The burden is different from who actually pays the tax. So, although the progressive
burden of the tariff is on the company. What they could do is figure out a cheaper way to be able to move their good. They could figure out a cheaper way to manufacture their good. They could figure out a way to not pay as much of their workers to be able to account for it. There's a whole lot of things that they could do than just pass it on to the consumer.
So, who pays the tax on like an accounting measure is completely different from where the actual burden of the tax is. For example, the corporate income tax technically taxes corporation. However, not all the incidence is on the corporation. A lot of the incidence is on workers through reduced hours and consumers through increased prices. Much the same way, if you tariff a good, the incidence is not just on the corporation. Some corporations will eat the cost by reducing prices, but a lot of corporations will just pass on the cost to consumer because corporations don't have 20% margins a lot of time. Clearly, some of this tax has to be passed on to consumers.
And that's a choice that the company will make, whether or not they do that.
But, okay, so that's a choice that they make, but we agree the end result of one of those choices would be that the consumer bears the burden of the tax.
You're assuming the need by the consumer 100% of the time when you say that, and I'm not. So
well, I'm not saying 100% of the time. Right now, I'm just trying to get...
That product is on the shelf as far as I'm concerned.
Wait, right now, what I'm trying to get is just like hypothetically, we can go into real examples later, but hypothetically, we do accept that the burden of the tax could be on the consumer, right?
It could, but that all has to do with the choice that the company makes.
Yeah, I agree. It does have to do with the choice the company makes, but the end result of those is being born on the consumer.
It could, which is what we've said 3 different times. Stop trying to change the fucking word around. It could.
Wait.
We agree on the could part, because I think we can. Maybe I'm wrong. I think we both agree. At least looking at the past, looking at stats, it seems like in most cases when a tariff like this is put in place, it at least practically it leads to it being pushed on consumers. You can argue like maybe that.
Yeah. I can cite a few studies here, but like I was just it sounded like at first he didn't concede to the point that the tariff could be borne by the burden.
I said could to begin with. Maybe you didn't.
No, you didn't.
Right?
Nope, we literally had to run through the. Nope, we had. You said the burden was on the corporation.
You're right. The fucking cost and the fucking burden of it is on the corporation. Could they choose to send the cost onto the consumer? They absolutely could. I said the same fucking shit earlier.
So the burden of the tax is different than who actually pays.
The burden is on the company. They can make a choice as to how they're going to recover their fucking cost, their costs. Period.
So if
whether it's by making a cheaper arrangement in the logistics or whatever.
Let's let Nonfon respond. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if they make the choice to pass the cost on to consumer, in economics point of view, the burden of the tax is on the consumers. even if the corporation technically is the one that actually pays the money to the treasury, the person who actually suffers is the consumer. I don't know CTV's views on the corporate income tax.
And like I said a minute ago, you're assuming 100% need of this product in this imaginary market.
What do you mean 100% need? Do you mean like elasticity?
If you're going to start including the human cost of it and say suffering, then you're assuming 100% need of that product in that market. Okay, so
specify what you mean by 100% need.
You're assuming that there's no other product on the market that's going to be able to be cheaper than that product that person could go get instead of that product. That's what I'm saying. You're assuming 100% need.
So yeah, Eli, I mean, it works even if it's elastic. How elastic the demand curve is shifts who the burden is on exactly. But even if it is elastic,
that's why I'm not including the human part of it, right? I'm staying strictly inside the fucking financials. Who's paying what, right? The company pays the tariff, right? And then the company can make a choice to pass that added cost onto the consumer. They don't have to, but they absolutely can.
I agree, but like generally when we speak of the tax burden is different from who actually, from an accounting or financial perspective.
I'm not getting into the fucking word games, okay? I've said my fucking piece on it.
All right, okay. So it seems like we accept the fact that, some tariffs the price effect of it can be passed through to the consumer. Now, like, we have a few different studies on this from, more general tariffs to like Trump-specific tariffs. I can cite a few of them. I don't know how much you care about them, but generally they have a very high pass-through effect. There's a 2019 study focused on Trump's tariffs. They found that the imports from China, the price of it was almost fully passed through to U.S. consumers. I can cite that one. There's a 2023 report from the International Trade Commission, which finds a near complete pass-through for the price of steel and aluminum from the Chinese tariffs.
Right. So let's
there's another study from the researchers at Columbia University finds the same thing.
Let's just take the steel. Let's just take the steel example, okay? Because you're trying to jump around too much. Steel cost went up, went all straight to the consumers, right? What happened?
A lot of it. Yep. What happened?
Nobody bought the fucking steel, and it got shipped back to China.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, you're saying because the price of steel increased due to the tariffs, nobody bought steel and all the jobs went to China?
They weren't able to continue dumping that cheap-ass steel here in the United States. It went back to China, and then the market settled out. That's why the prices spiked, like you said a minute ago. Then they settled back out. It's a lot of these things.
Wait, no, I get what you're saying.
You gotta, a lot of these things, man, you gotta, it's one thing to understand, like, well, this, and this. Right, but when you look at, you come out a couple of layers up into the clouds, right? Like you're playing Age of Empires, right? Like maybe you're looking at just like one set of men over here and they're building this fucking farm and they're doing this, that, and the other. But like when you come out and you see how everything else is playing together, right? That's where, like, I would encourage you to go back and, like, say, review NAFTA, how that affected all of the manufacturing here in the United States, and how there's not as much manufacturing now as a result. Where those jobs went. Say again?
I said debatable, but just, the way you phrased it initially was confusing. The way you phrased it, to me, it made it sound like you're saying that the steel tariffs led to jobs going to China. I understand now that's not what you mean.
Jobs going to... No.
No, you said, I forget exactly what you said, but the way you phrased it, maybe I just misheard it. It sounded like you were saying the steel tariffs led to jobs going to China. So I don't deny...
No, it led to that steel going back to China, because nobody bought it.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, it led to that steel going back to... The way I interpreted it was like steel jobs in America were going back to China. That was my misunderstanding. But I understand what you're saying. So there's a few things I'm gonna respond to. One, even if, some, I'll say on... talking about jobs, even if some still jobs were protected, free trade typically, almost always actually, has net benefits, and imposing tariffs has net cost, and the loss to consumers is greater than the loss to producers. So almost always we see a decrease in jobs. This is in fact what happened.
When you say free market, though, what do you mean when you say that?
Can I finish my? I can get to that.
I know. I'm really curious about that.
Let's let Nonfon finish, and then we can ask any questions.
I'll finish my point. Like, this is in fact what happened. Trump steel tariffs, as many studies confirmed. Steel is an especially bad thing to tariff as well because it's an intermediate good. So companies use it to make other things. If we tariff steel, then the nail company gets harmed. So they can't compete with Canadian nail companies who don't pay the tariff. Steel is used to build factories in general. Steel consuming jobs outnumber steel producing jobs 80-1. The second thing I'm going to respond to is, this U.S. manufacturing point. I think there are some national security reasons to bring U.S. manufacturing back. However, you should consider the opportunity cost of bringing these steel jobs back. So we could bring steel jobs back. That is true via tariff. However, there's a large opportunity cost for that. Everyone working a steel job is someone not working for Apple making iPhones. Those jobs making iPhones are way more productive.
That's a horrible example considering iPhones are being made in China, right?
What'd you say, right? What?
I said, aren't iPhones being made in China?
The final assembly is usually done in China. However, the design of it is the high productivity aspect of it, which is the research and development into designing and engineering. Is all done in
you think
California.
that it's better that we allow the manufacturing of the biggest part of it to go happen in China instead of having that happen here in the United States? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, you say there's two things. You say the biggest part of it, but really like the high intensity manufacturing happens in the U.S., which is all this design and engineering, which is very capital intensive.
No,
it's very
you're
high
just mentioning
productivity.
computer work right now. You're mentioning computer work. Computer work, none of the physical pieces.
Sure.
That all happens in China, right?
Yes, but that's very.
Thank you.
Yeah, the final assembly happens in China.
You're like
I believe that is
playing up these jobs as if they're so fucking great, right? And if those other jobs isn't as great, why don't we get the fucking phone actually made in the United States rather than it being made in China?
because of the opportunity cost. Number one. And two, tariffs aren't even a great way to do that.
It's because they're exploiting the labor over there so that they can sell the cost of their phone that much cheaper, right? Because if they weren't exploiting the fucking labor over there, they wouldn't be able to get it to you for what, $1,200, $1,300? It costs more.
Well, one,
think about the power that's sitting there in your hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's fucking amazing. I got the Samsung Z Flip 6, right? Amazing, right? But the power that's in this fucking thing dwarfs what I would have even had my close to ability of having 20 years ago. You know what I mean? But
I agree.
Think about this. In 20 years from now, is this thing going to be able to get any way past where it's at now? I don't think so. Maybe it gets a little bit faster. Maybe, because it's got camera, voice, mics.
There are diminishing returns. I agree.
Right. So it's pretty much peak. So what's the next thing? So that's the thing that I would be curious more about, is getting that manufacturing back here in the United States, if for no other reason than a national security one.
Well, I don't believe manufacturing iPhones is a national security reason. I do believe there can be cases of national security considerations.
You don't consider the privacy of millions of Americans
first of all,
national security?
I don't think just because the final assembly is done in China, that means the privacy is compromised. But I would also
you're assuming you're assuming good ethical practices from manufacturers over in China, that they're not somehow putting some kind of bug back in the firmware that they could be listening back or be pulling data back from in the network and you not even know it. So
I don't think there's any good reason to believe that's happening. I don't think there's any evidence that's happening. I think Apple takes privacy pretty seriously. That's why presidents use iPhones and aren't allowed to use Android.
For the last fucking decade or more, and you're going to say that there's not a good reason to not trust China? Give me a fucking break, bro.
There's not a good reason to believe that just because the final assembly of
everybody's fucking property. You're going to tell me that's not a good reason not to trust them?
They may be stealing it. I don't deny that China's stealing intellectual property.
The chips are, like, for example, designed in California, but for example, they might do the assembly, so taking the more complex objects and putting them together. That might happen in China. So just to be clear, it's not like the whole assembly is happening in China necessarily.
What is exactly what they're doing in the United States then? Besides the computer
they're
work?
designing, engineering the very capital-intensive things. China has a lot of cheap labor. I agree, but U.S. capital markets are
designing. They're designing chips. That's why I was calling it. There's more.
Yeah, the labor.
So they're designing it, right? They're doing the computer program work and designing the chips, and that's not the actual physical product, right?
No, not the final assembly of the physical product.
Okay. Just want to make sure we understand what we're talking about.
So what effect on jobs do you think it would have if we tariffed iPhone production and tried to bring that manufacturing back here? Do you think that would have a net positive effect on jobs? Do you think that would have a net negative effect?
I think in the long run, that's what we need to be moving towards. Because self-sustainability has to be a priority of the government of any land, or it's not going to continue. Right? If you're not thinking about taking care of yourself and your people first, you're not gonna keep going, right? It's just like you can't if you're sitting there starving and all you got is $5, right? You don't give somebody else the $5 and not get something to eat yourself. You get, maybe you get, $2. You get something, then you can help somebody out, right? But you got to take care of yourself first. That's why they tell you on the airplane, right? Put on your mask first before you go to help anybody else, right?
Okay, so do you think if we were to put like tariffs on iPhone manufacturing, what do you think that would have a net positive effect on jobs in the U.S.?
I don't think that there's enough of a market for iPhones that we're going to be able to, do anything enough for people as far as that's concerned. But I do think there's a number of jobs that could come back that would be able to help a number of people here, right? What the kinds of markets that you need to be watching out for are like steel production, oil, right? Your basic, fundamentals of civilization, right? Those are the things that you need to be making sure are definitely free and fair and of a certain quality too. You just don't want somebody making shit and dumping it on the market, which is one of the reasons for a long time China wasn't allowed in. And then they finally let them in, right? And everything you go fucking buy at the store now is made in China. And look at what's been happening to the people here. Everything here used to be made in the United States. And dude, it's crazy. You go back and look at like refrigerators back from the 50s versus what we're getting today. Bro, I want a refrigerator from the 50s. Those sons of bitches last forever. And they got way more features. And we're getting these fucking... to get anything comparable now, you're paying $2,500 easy. And it's going to be, and you know what? You're going to have to replace it in 4 to 6 years. That's a guarantee because that's how they manufacture them now. That's the other thing that all of this shit has done.
The planned obsolescence point is kind of tangential to this. I don't really need to go down that rabbit hole. What I really want to focus on right now is jobs.
You're talking about your iPhone before. Like the flip side is we have the awesome technology like the iPhone that's pretty cheap and available because of globalization also. So there's pros also. Even you admit that.
So now it's 2v1 instead of a moderator.
So,
got it. Oh, look at me calling you on your shit.
I trust you.
I'm being very moderate in the middle, just saying, hey, you mentioned this earlier, just calling it out.
Yeah, so I mean, CTV like mentioned, like there are cases where like you want to make sure production is here for national security reasons. Steel maybe could be that case. I just
maybe we only build cities and ships out of it. I mean, I don't fucking know.
I mean, steel. I also don't. I don't want steel production to be here. Really, I think the opportunity cost is too high. If we try to friendshore it to Japan or one of our allies, I would prefer that.
Where do you think a lot of the raw materials come to be able to make that stuff?
Minerals in the earth, but here they're
really.
I believe.
You think it's minerals in the earth? You think that Nucor Steel in Memphis, Tennessee, they're only using minerals from the earth in order to produce their special bar quality steel? Is that what you think?
Well, I mean, nature and labor, but the thing I want to focus, the reason I don't necessarily want that to be here is because of the
materials that they gather up in large mass, and then they put them into an electric arc furnace, and they melt them motherfuckers down, and then they cast the steel, right? Like it all gets put together. Recycling is one of those things that has been getting shipped right over to
Well,
China,
I don't.
and they would.
I mean, that comes
So,
from the.
but here
that comes from Earth
recently-
originally, but like, maybe some of it's recycled. That's fine. But there's a good reason I don't want this to be here. It's because of the opportunity cost of it being here. Again, every steel worker here reflects someone who isn't working in Apple, doing much higher productivity things. Furthermore, there are further harms tariffs have.
Not
Like, if we
everybody
do a
needs
tariff
an
to protect-
iPhone. Not everybody needs an iPhone.
I guess I don't dispute that, but like generally, if we're trying to
Okay.
measure
You think everybody
quality of
needs
life,
what things do you think people do need though? Let's talk about that.
I don't see how that's particularly
Because we're going to get
relevant.
closer to a
guess-
market to where it actually becomes relevant. Because everybody doesn't need an iPhone, and we're talking about steel kind of innuendo. So I'm trying to what market, right? What do you think everybody needs?
I don't see how that's particularly relevant to this right now. I'm not interested in discussing what people's.
You're
what
talking about a very
material needs
niche
are.
market whenever you say you want to have steel workers, which there's a whole lot of functions and uses
Well,
for
we can
steel.
talk about
and
any
you want to
market,
move
like,
millions of jobs, right, of people that could be doing steel
Well, I
work
deny tariffs help
overseas
jobs.
instead of them being here in the United States, simply because you would rather have them producing iPhones, which is something that not everybody fucking needs. So I need you to give me a fucking market in which we're going to actually be operating. That's going to make sense. If you're going to be sending millions of steel workers over fucking seas.
Well, not iPhones.
Well, we
but
can
I
apply
think
this logic to any market. I don't care about. Let's talk about any market. Let's talk about car manufacturing. Let's talk about farming.
wanna clarify.
Like the same
We're talking
comparative
about-
advantage applies in any market.
We're talking about specific tariffs, which I don't think we're against. We're against universal tariffs. So just want to clarify. I like talking about the individual ones also, but just want to
What's
clarify.
the definition of a universal tariff?
Well, to be clear, the point
And
I'm
I'm gonna
trying to get
pour
at
some
here is
sweet
I
tea
don't
right quick. I'll be back.
think.
I'm listening now.
Okay, well, sure. Universal
still
tariffs,
talk to
I
you
would
too,
say, are
but-
He's got a wireless mic.
Okay,
so
great.
keep going.
yeah. Universal tariffs, I would say, are tariffs on literally everything, or maybe 99% of things crossing imported into the U.S. But the point I was really trying to drill down here on was that tariffs really don't, in aggregate, protect jobs because of specialization and comparative advantage. That's the point I really want to drill down on. I want to make sure CTV knows that anytime we tariff something, we're protecting some jobs at the expense of others, and that should inform how we and when we tariff things.
I would say that what we're doing is recovering the expected gains that they thought they were going to have by going overseas and exploiting labor. But you can call it whatever you want.
I mean, I've already responded to the exploiting thing, but I disagree that we're recovering gains, because I believe free trade is a net benefit to us, essentially, because of
Right.
comparative
Who's
advantage.
ensuring
You know
that?
what that is?
Who's ensuring the
ensuring
free
what?
trade?
I mean, we've already gone over this. Like, yeah, the U.S. Navy spends a lot to ensure free trade. I think that's
You're
a benefit
right.
to
The
us.
United States is providing the free trade, so everybody else is getting something for nothing. Right?
Well, I want to say for nothing, trade tends to be mutually beneficial. So, like, the U.S. benefits from trade that it does with China, that it does with India, that it does with Europe, that it does with all these countries.
No, those are individual trade deals that get to be made between companies and yada, 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 right? The companies, the free trade, right,
Well,
is what the military
US Navy
ensures
ensures
so
those
that
trade deals
companies
can
can
happen.
be able to trade with each other, right? And then at some point, right, through the national border, that's when the government gets a say, right?
Well, my understanding is that your claim is that the U.S. spent a lot of money allowing free trade to happen, and all these other countries are getting something for nothing in that sense, right?
They absolutely are getting something for nothing. They're getting
So-
access to the American market, and they're not having to pay a dime for it. So yeah,
My claim is
they're
simply,
getting something for nothing.
that they're not getting something for nothing because the U.S. also benefits from trade with these countries. Do you dispute that the
It-
U.S. benefits from trade with these countries?
There's no reason to dispute that. What you're not acknowledging is what the fuck I said.
Well, I just acknowledge that by saying they're not getting something from nothing because we also benefit
They
from
are
trade with them.
getting
That's my
something
position.
for nothing. Whether or not the trade is
Well, how
beneficial is irrelevant to the fucking numbers game. There's millions of dollars spent ensuring the free trade. They're not paying a fucking dime for it. So guess what? It's something for nothing. The companies, right? The
He's
companies that are
disputing the
owned by
nothing part. He's saying there
the-
is something.
Jesus Christ. The
Yeah, I'm saying we
companies,
benefit
right, that
from
are
this as well because we benefit from being able to trade with these countries.
You're not the companies that operate inside these nations, right, are the ones
Uh-huh.
making their deals, and they're the ones and the people that work for them, right? And then the where those people spends their money, right? That is where it's beneficial. In a part in there, whenever it comes to competition, right? This other person over here is able to pay their workers an obscene amount of, little ass money, basically fucking slaves, to produce a product that might and more than likely be inferior, but at a cheaper cost, that is more of a throwaway item, which is what exactly like Christmas lights. That's a great example. We send millions of pounds of trash over to China for years. They turn it into Christmas lights. They turn around and ship it back to us and sell it to us, and we throw them back away again. And they fucking same shit. Fucking crazy. And you want to continue this same cycle without understanding that it's the American people being fucking hurt, so that foreign nations that are, as soon as they get to a point to where that they can kind of have any kind of a say on the world stage, want to start acting out. That's the problem. I don't think they deserve to be having access to the American market and the free trade that they're providing if they don't know how to act right on the world stage.
Well, I agree. If like countries are doing bad things, we should sanction them and maybe even tariff them. That's why, I believe we should sanction Russia and, maybe tariff Russian imports as well because they're not exactly behaving. But I don't think it's fair to say that they're getting something for nothing if the U.S. is benefiting from our trade relationship with them.
Just because there's a benefit doesn't mean that anybody else is paying the cost.
Well, if we're spending the money and we benefit from it, and they also benefit from it, that seems fine to me. Where
you're
everyone
throwing
is
it all
benefiting.
into one pot, and it's not in one pot.
I don't know exactly what you mean by that.
As someone in the middle here, yeah, because I think I see what both people are saying, but I don't see it as a trade for nothing because I think it's all contributing us to be like a global hegemonic economic power. Whereas like one of the reasons, like for example, Amazon is so successful is because they're not just an American company; they're able to exist in other countries also. So there's a benefit, although maybe not quite as clear, by like enabling free trade across the globe.
Without the U.S. Navy there, is anybody doing the job? What do you think happens if the U.S. Navy isn't there?
I think trade would be a lot less unsafe. I don't dispute that.
A lot more pirates and shit like that, right? So then the whole idea of that company being able to have, to ship their goods to another country across the sea without having to provide their own escort for their goods to make sure that nobody stole it.
I mean, I don't disagree. My
so
point is simply
right
that
there,
the U.S.
So listen. So understanding that the baseline is piracy, right? And so if that's the baseline for normal, and then there's something that changes that. So the United States changed that and set a new default. The cost is all being paid here for it. Everybody else gets it as a result because we're telling everybody else to sit down, shut the fuck up, and don't fuck with our boats. Period. And that's why we'll go put our boats in their ports, hoping that somebody, I think it's just more like I dare you sometimes, but like, don't fuck with our boats. Everybody fucking knows that. As soon as you fuck with one of our boats, what happens? Everybody comes to fuck with you. So that's the cost that we pay, period, for everybody else. Now, it's not to say that it's a justification for the tariff, but it's understanding that that baseline is insured by the American taxpayer, period. So when it comes to any tariff that is being considered for a product, my understanding from what Trump has said is that products that have manufacturers here in the United States, because he's not trying to not have a supply of a product be to the people. If there's competition from foreign markets before they come here, there's a tariff. If not, then there's not. So that's the baseline understanding for, I'd say, millions of Americans right there.
I've already walked through what I believe Trump has said, but I guess my point is just I believe it is a net benefit to the U.S. that we spend money enabling free trade, because free trade benefits the U.S. as well as our allies.
I agree that us doing that does benefit us as well as everybody else.
Okay, so it seems like we agree it's probably a good thing that the U.S. Navy does this, right?
Oh yeah, we've been kicking ass for a long ass time.
All right, great. And then,
But
yeah,
that doesn't
it seems like we
mean
agree foreign
it
nations
doesn't mean
don't
that
pay
everybody else
tariffs,
isn't getting
right?
something for nothing, because they are. They're not paying the cost of the reactor fuel that goes into any of the reactors in our ships.
Well,
They're not
okay.
paying any of
You
it.
understand? Tariffs would
The
not make
American
them pay
tax,
the cost, though.
because if they were, that would be like somehow to say that any other nation has any type of say over our ships, and they fucking don't, right? Only the American taxpayers have say over our fucking boats. So
Well, but
that's
we. I mean, it
exactly
seems
where
like.
I'm at with like the whole.
Wait. It seems like you
Nobody else
agreed
is
with it at
paying
the
the
start of the
cost.
debate.
Nobody
Foreign
else is
nations
paying
don't
the
pay the
cost.
cost of tariffs, right? So tariffs would not help other companies pay this, like, because U.S. companies pay it and U.S. consumers pay it. So it's not like foreign nations are going to help pay for our Navy if we use tariffs. We agree with that, right?
Say that one more time.
The U.S. taxpayer is the one that pays tariffs, not foreign nations. So if we
Wrong.
put tariffs up,
U.S. taxpayers don't pay tariffs. Manufacturers that want to bring their products into the United States, if there's a tariff, will pay that tariff.
so when I say U.S. taxpayers, that can refer to a manufacturer, not just individual people. Like corporations pay taxes.
No, you can't refer to the U.S. taxpayers as far as manufacturers, right? Because that's not how it works, right? Because the way that it works is that tax dollars are collected, it goes to the government, and the government sends out, a notice, a contract, right? Everybody gets to make a product. Whoever comes with the best one, the cheapest one, whatever, that's the contract that they get, and then that company is awarded the contract. So at that point, it's in the hands that American taxpayers get paid to a private company in order to produce the product that the taxpayers want. So then once it's turned back over to the taxpayers, i.e. a ship, right, in this example, then the ship is owned by the taxpayers, because that's what the taxpayer dollar produced. See what I'm saying?
I mean, like the Wikipedia for taxpayers is a taxpayer is a person or organization, such as a company, subject to a tax. Obviously, manufacturers are subject to a tax. They are based in the U.S., so I would say, yes, the U.S. taxpayer is the one paying these taxes.
It's a little bit semantical, but yeah, I agree. Corporations are made of taxpayers, but I do think the language could be a little more clear.
I mean, yeah, like clearly, like the U.S. is the one paying these taxes, not foreign companies. We seem to agree on that point, so I don't see the need to debate semantics.
And look, you're jumping back and forth between looking at the world in a global way and then back into a regional way when it suits you. It's it's exercising the fuck out of my patience. Okay?
Okay. Uh-huh. Can you explain how am I looking at the world in a global way versus a regional way?
Because whenever I'm sitting there
what's...
talking about it in the world stage, and I'm talking about taxpayers, right? I'm obviously talking about taxpayer dollars that were collected, paid to the U.S. government, and then the U.S. government took that to a private manufacturer to produce product. Did the workers that were working at that company have to pay taxes? Yes, they did. Does that somehow mean that those workers now have, because of their association to that company, any say over the product they're fucking making? No, they have zero connection because they manufactured it there. They have every connection because they're a fucking taxpayer that voted. It's like that's the inconsistency, right, that you're presenting right now in the language, and it's It's one of those like devilish tricks that I've seen so many times for people on the left when they do it just to subvert language. Now, I want to have a good conversation about this, but you need to be able to follow whenever I'm saying taxpayer up here, and then you want to flip it down here, and then I don't want to do that. I don't want to play mental fucking gymnastics. Either you know what the fuck you're talking about, or you're trying to figure out what the fuck you're talking about. And if you're trying to figure out what the fuck you're talking about, then we can have a conversation where you can impart knowledge and let me know what you know, and then I can let you know what I know, and we can move forward smartly. But trying to have a debate where you are definitely not prepared to be having one is only exercise of my patience.
I mean, I think I'm being way more precise with my language than you, but it's semantics, so I don't really care about the meta conversation. So,
I mean, I think we should be okay with semantics coming up because this is a really complicated topic. So I don't think it's crazy like that. Miscommunications do arise. I think we should be okay with that and just address them as they come up.
I guess, when I say the burden's on the U.S. taxpayer, I simply mean that people holding U.S. dollars that are U.S. citizens are the ones paying the tax, or an organization based in the U.S., holding U.S. dollars are the one paying the tax to the
Treasury. Imprecise way to refer to it. It's so imprecise.
I don't think that definition of taxpayer
if you're an
is
American
particularly
citizen
imprecise.
that has American dollars, but what if you're a fucking foreign national that has American dollars?
Well, those people typically aren't taxpayers. It depends. I mean, they can pay excise taxes, I guess, if they buy something. But that's what I mean when I say the U.S. taxpayer. All I tried to get across by saying that was that, China is not the one paying these tariffs. Germany isn't the one paying these tariffs. The burden at the end of the day is on the United States, at least primarily on the United States for these tariffs. That was the idea I was trying to get across. It seems like we agree on this.
Look, but that's not...
We'd agreed on this earlier.
Yeah, we are...
He's not saying, because he's not saying the consumer part. He's just saying...
No, he's flipping it back around. Earlier we said that the company is responsible for paying the tariff and that it could. And now he's definitely saying that it is. And this is the bullshit with the fucking language now.
No.
He's
all I'm saying is someone based in the U.S.
does not pay
it.
Yeah. He's just saying...
Well, no shit.
And
look, countries don't...
CTV,
look.
we've had a lot of debates on YouTube. People do not understand that, so it's not that crazy to clarify that.
And people don't.
I don't even know
that.
Why would you even bring a country like China doesn't pay this? Of course, China doesn't pay it, but maybe what's that? Huawei? What's that big Chinese company over there?
Huawei.
CTV. Do you at least
starts with a H? Huawei.
Maybe
Huawei. I think is how, yeah.
Anyway, but that company pays the tariff, right? Whatever the company is individual and separate from the nation, the government, right? To me, these are very simple things to understand, right? And it keeps getting convoluted. There's the government, and then there's the company. Right? And then the company gets to make choices, right? So the government's right here says, nope, you got to pay a tariff. And then the company goes, well, fuck, I don't want to pay the tariff. Well, you don't get access to our market. Oh, well, fuck, I want to pay the tariff. Well, shit, now we had to pay this tariff to get our product over here. We're going to pass costs on to consumers. Okay. Well, they made a choice to fucking do that. The government didn't force them to, did they? Right. The only problem that I really think that you're having here is that you don't trust Trump, right? You don't trust the people that are around him. You don't trust the policies. You don't trust that part, right? And I think that's where your problem is.
That's absolutely not
his economic policy.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's the issue here. I think the issue here really is we're coming at it from different frameworks. So when I say burden, we mean a different thing by burden because I'm using burden in a more strict economics textbook econ bro sense and not a very colloquial sense. So I think that creates miscommunications.
No, it's not a miscommunication, right? The burden period, right, is who had to pay it, who was required to pay it. The company was required to pay it. They weren't required to pass it on to the consumer. That's what you're convoluting in there. The company was required. The consumer, if they purchased it, the price was raised because the company chose to.
But I think we're getting up a little bit track because I can see what you're saying, but I think I think I see what's happening. I think both me and Nonfon have met a lot of people who don't really understand how tariff works. They're under the assumption that, for example, if you do a tariff on China, China pays the tariff. I think we all agree that's not the case. But I think a lot of people, at least online, don't seem to understand how they work. So we're talking.
Well, I can't help out that like 90% of the people on the internet are fucking morons.
Well, I just want to clarify. So I think when we're having this discussion, Nonfon is trying to be really clear or really emphasize that part of the argument where in no case is China, for example, paying a tariff. That burden, as he's saying, is being put on the American taxpayer.
It's not being placed on the American taxpayer. It's being placed on the foreign company. The foreign company can then choose to raise the price of their product before it comes in or after it comes into this American market, if they so choose.
Well, it's not necessarily a foreign company. It can be a domestic company.
But they are required.
Yeah, that's why I don't get. Yeah,
the burden
American
of the
companies
tariff
buying Chinese products. Wouldn't that be the case?
American.
Isn't that what we're talking about?
That would be an import. American companies buying
So
Chinese
taxes
right?
What we're talking about is, for example, Trump has said, I want to get the exact number, putting a 60% tariff across the board on all Chinese imports. So yeah, like we're talking about stuff like that. A tariff on all imports from China, 60%. So yeah, so we're talking about imports. We're talking about, that seems relevant, no?
What product specifically in that 60%?
Oh my God.
I mean, let's understand 60% should be like some pretty big like markets right off the top. So what's like 10,
All
20,
imports.
30% all import. Okay, wow.
Wait, I'm happy to go down.
That's like everything is
road.
made in China now. So we're just all fucked. We should just go ahead and prepare for skyrocketing costs and oh my God, nothing's ever made in America.
Well, that's really what I want to talk about. I'm less interested in debating the semantics of what tax incidence means, what the tax burden means, and these technical economic definitions. What I really want to talk about most is probably like comparative advantage is a technical term too. Do you understand what that means, CTV?
Nope. Why don't you go ahead and tell me? I'm just an old fart that don't understand a fucking thing. Yep.
So comparative advantage, really, it's just the ability to produce something at a lower opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is just what you have to give up in order to make something. Something really great about free trade is that it allows countries to specialize what they have a comparative advantage in. So I think we can all agree. If Vietnam and the U.S. were both only making shoes, the U.S. could almost certainly make more shoes than Vietnam. That gives us an absolute advantage in shoes. However, Vietnam specializes in making shoes, and we don't, because Vietnam has the comparative advantage in making shoes. What that means is that when Vietnam makes shoes, it has to give up less than the U.S. does if it makes shoes. And I mean, intuitively seems obvious, like the U.S. is pretty high productivity. Everyone making in a shoe factory in America is someone not making iPhones. And iPhones make a lot more money than shoes. Software, Microsoft, that makes a lot more money than shoes.
You think iPhones make more money than shoes?
What's the market cap of Apple versus the market cap of Nike? Generally.
Yeah, that's just one brand of shoe, bro. You said shoes.
Wait, I think.
Hold on. If you just opened your fucking mouth and inserted your foot and didn't consider the whole fucking market of shoes before you said that shoes broadly, right, which would include boots and fucking everything else, right? Then you're the one that fucking did it. Be more precise with your language.
Well, sorry, I should have been more precise. I think the tech sector makes more than the shoe sector, the advanced tech sector.
No. What you said is not wrong, because I think you're missing one big difference between a shoe and an iPhone. An iPhone has a marketplace on it where literally Apple makes money on apps that are made on it, where you can't do that in a shoe.
Yeah, but check this out.
Not everybody needs an
iPhone, but everybody needs a pair of shoes.
Well, I'd argue
that doesn't mean shoes make more money, but
become more technically dependent as a society. You might need a computer to.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
the average person. But yeah.
The way they do the codes with Apples anymore, you got to get the new one every year, otherwise they start fucking with you. So yeah, I mean,
doesn't really matter. We're talking about value. The thing is, you can't.
Well, here's
have a
CTV.
marketplace on a shoe, but yeah.
I think we should generally be able to accept two things. One, do we accept that the U.S., our labor productivity is higher than other countries, generally speaking?
I don't see a reason why we can't be, producing those shoes here in the United States. Matter of fact, there's a lot. There's a whole market. I'm pretty sure of boots that are being made in the United States.
Well, one, that does not answer my question. I was asking whether,
You don't want to buy boots?
Well, I'm asking, do we generally have higher productivity than other countries? Do we think that's true?
Yeah, I would.
And then do we think our capital markets are stronger than other countries too?
I don't know. Yeah, generally.
Yeah, so it seems like we agree on that. Do we think that capital markets are also better in the U.S. in terms of, how much money people have to spend on stocks and bonds and invest in all these things?
It sounds like you're only giving me reasons to make sure I protect that market.
Well, I mean, a trade deficit actually helps with that, but
does it?
I disagree. Yeah, the trade deficit is a financial account surplus. Yeah.
Well, there's only a point where you can push out so much manufacturing before you're left with a complete service-based, service. What's the
service? I mean, service-based economy, like service industry
economy, right? There's only so much manufacturing that you can push out, and then have all the employment relied on that before you actually cap where the middle class is going to be able to grow to. And that's exactly the problem that we have right now. They keep throwing on the taxes, and the people can't grow past this point because the manufacturing jobs aren't there. And you want to go into like education from earlier, right? Getting rid of the Federal Department of Education is a great way to fucking go, because schools now are not preparing people for actual jobs out in the fucking real world. So there's a whole lot of reasons why we need to get these manufacturing jobs back so that we can give people something to do, because not everybody is going to be on par intellectually with producing a fucking iPhone. So you have to have jobs that normal everyday people are going to be able to do, because guess what? You can have somebody that has the ability to be able to make an iPhone but doesn't have the fucking want to, and it doesn't matter how much money you want to fucking throw at them. If they don't want to fucking do it, they're not gonna fucking do it. So every way around, it's better to have more opportunities for people here where we are producing these products so that everybody has a job. And the next thing we're going to go, oh, well, job numbers and this and that. And it's like you really need to travel around the country and see what's going on with people.
Well, no. Well, my point's just simply going to be like a basic economic model shows that free trade actually maximizes net jobs. You may say those jobs are in the service sector over the manufacturing sector, but I don't see why that's necessarily a bad thing. We have a comparative advantage in service sector jobs because we're high productivity, and service sector jobs generally require higher productivity workers than, low skill manufacturing jobs.
I'll meet in the middle, where I do see CTV's concern, where it seems like, at least in general, like the general job is becoming more intellectually demanding, where maybe like the average IQ required to do that job is kind of going up over time. Where definitely, if you look at maybe 20, 40 years ago, there's probably more easy to attain, easier to do jobs, where now definitely, partially because of specialization, we've been going in a direction where maybe not everyone can maybe go over some of the hurdles put in place or can achieve what we're looking for.
Because, here's the point, right?
So, here, let me just, there's two things.
I was backing you up, so I want to see Nonfon respond, please.
I just want to say there's two things with this whole manufacturing, job skill thing or whatever. I don't deny that there are winners and losers from trade, right? Certainly low skill workers are hurt by some free trade agreements, whereas high skill workers benefit. What I'm stating is that the net benefit is maximized by free trade. So the high skill workers gain more than the low skill workers lose. The second thing I'm going to point out is that just as free trade,
the fact that you're even considering losses on the low end lets me know that you don't actually give a fuck about all of the people. right?
Well, I do care. I care what maximizes benefit for other people. But the second thing I'm going to say is protectionism has redistribution effects the same way that that free trade has redistribution effects. So if we tariff people who consume more of the tariff good are going to be hurt more, and the money that goes to the government is going to benefit some people more than others. So this has the same type of redistribution effects that free trade does. It's just a matter of which redistribution effects do we prefer and which one maximizes total surplus. Free trade maximizes total surplus. I believe there's good reasons to also think that we should that the redistribution effects caused by free trade are beneficial as well. But CTV continue about me not liking low income people.
Well, genuine question, because I think I want to get into this topic at some point. But when you say that CTV that doesn't care about certain groups, are you kind of referencing maybe like the low skilled or low paying jobs we're doing in other countries? Is that kind of what you're talking about when he doesn't care about someone?
You just said, look, when you're sitting there talking about high paying Apple jobs, right? How well has that actually worked out for California? It hasn't.
They have a really high GDP, right?
And a dwindling population, right? Great.
Yeah, I think that's mainly
the thing that you're missing is like that. It doesn't take that many fucking people to do that, but everybody needs shoes. Everybody needs electricity. Everybody needs fucking plumbing, air conditioning. Everybody needs these fucking things. They don't need a fucking iPhone. So it's like this cognitive disconnect that you've got between like economics and the policies and what happens in everyday fucking life. And I'm sitting there looking at you like, when the fuck are you going to wake up?
Okay, well,
just exercising my patience, man. That's what this is. It's like and I don't know if it's like just the general education.
I'm a big capitalist. I love free markets, okay? I think free markets do a great job at aggregating information. So
do you think that foreign nations are protecting their workers the way that we're protecting ours for labor laws, minimum wage, et cetera, across the board, standard of living, et cetera?
A lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't.
They are not, right?
Yep, correct. But my point
into this topic, maybe we can do it now, is like whether offshoring or like low paying labor, whether that's inherently exploitative or what are the issues there? I'd like to tackle that as a topic if we can.
Do you mean in the U.S. or do you mean like in the developing countries? Wait. I want to. What was the point I was making before? I was talking about.
I want to get to that. Yeah.
Sure. So the government suffers from a lack of information. The government does not have the information of which jobs are more efficient to have here versus which jobs are more efficient to offshore. It doesn't know what.
Government doesn't need to be trying to control that. They need to open up the fucking market and let the people decide. The market will fix its fucking self. So that's exactly why if you have foreign companies that are trying to squeeble in a fucking product that they were able to make by exploiting labor instead of paying them their workers a fair fucking wage and actually giving a fuck about them before it comes into my fucking country where we insure those types of things, then place a tariff on that fucking product every day of the fucking week. I want the standards of the rest of the world to be raised to what the United States standard is, not for the United States standard to fucking lower.
But isn't that anti-free market? Like,
wait. Saying like me and CTV agree the free market does a great job at this.
Ensuring the free market by the United States.
One at a time. Nonfon.
Me and CTV agree the free market does a great job at aggregating information and choosing the most productive, allocation of resources. I don't know why CTV is assuming that as soon as we draw lines on a map, this system stops working. The government doesn't know whether it's more efficient to have iPhones manufactured here or shoes manufactured here.
That's why.
The government doesn't know whether it's more.
Not expect me not to answer.
The government doesn't know. The government doesn't know if it's more efficient to manufacture shoes here or more efficient to manufacture iPhones here. The free market aggregates the information of everyone's preferences and determines what the optimal number of shoes and iPhones manufactured here versus in China are. This is what's great about the free market.
Well,
CTV is arguing for imposing on these free markets.
the free market doesn't do that by itself, though, at the same time, right? Because you also have to include
I
in like
don't.
charity organizations that will donate large amounts of a thing and completely disrupt any type of manufacturing that could happen in an area because they literally just dropped off millions of fucking shoes. It happened in Africa. They were trying to set up manufacturing there for shoes. They had a nice little thing going. Nike gets a whole bunch of shoes collected together. They dropped them off. Next thing you know, manufacturing's gone. Right? So there's a lot of things that you have
I've
to
read about
account
that
for in there.
happening before, sure.
Right.
But
So that's where I, sitting here in the United States, decided that Donald Trump was the man to go fix this shit.
well, how is he fixing it? With what type of tax?
By what I said, he's going to take a look at all the companies that are producing products that are being produced in the United States versus products that are not being produced in the United States, and create a more fair market because of the differences in how nations allow companies to operate within their borders.
And he's gonna do this by imposing tariffs. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So my issue
This ain't the first time in history
tariffs
that
are
we've done
distortionary.
that, though, right? Or what?
No, absolutely not. No, we've done tariffs. We've done tariffs before. They were bad when we did them before. They're bad now. But
No, they weren't bad before. What are you talking about?
I think they were bad before, for the same reason I think they're bad now.
They were not
But
bad.
more
When
importantly,
were they bad?
tariffs
When were they bad?
are distortionary.
We're talking
They
about like
impose
100
on
years ago, bro. Tariffs are great.
Tariffs are distortionary. They lead to a misallocation of resources. They are imposing on free markets the same way any tax does, and can have
It's not a free
distortionary
market,
effects.
though. Like, we already discussed that, right? Can we agree that it's actually, in practice, not a free market?
Where do you mean by that? I don't.
Whole fucking world. It's not in reality. It's not actually a free market.
Free markets are the spectrum. Most of the world exists closer to the free market side. Some countries exist closer to the not free market command economy side.
Right. So without the
depends.
United States Navy, is there a free market?
Well, there would be. I think it would just be more dangerous to trade.
Oh, that doesn't sound like a free market to me, buddy. Sounds
just
like
because-
everybody would get very protectionist in their policies. That's what it sounds like.
Well, I don't think they'd get protections in their policies. I think it would just be more. I think there'd just be less trade because it'd be more expensive to trade.
Counterfeiting would be a lot more too. I mean, kind of like what China's been doing to us already, right?
I'm not aware
CTV,
of China counterfeiting. I'm aware of North Korea counterfeiting, but I don't think China engages in significant counterfeiting activities.
Really?
Do you mean counterfeiting, or do you mean stealing intellectual property? I agree they steal IP.
Both.
I'm not aware of
Absolutely
any
both.
big Chinese operations for counterfeiting currency, but maybe they do it.
I didn't say currency anywhere in there. I just said counterfeiting.
Oh,
Counterfeiting doesn't have to be just currency.
I heard counterfeiting. I guessed currency, but I'm counterfeiting. That when
So
you say
you learned a
counterfeiting,
new
not referring to
association that
currency,
you
I'm
have in your
saying-
mind that you need to disassociate. Outstanding.
Yeah, exactly. Those two neurons disconnected. Exactly. But when you say counterfeiting, I usually think currency, because the other thing I said was stealing intellectual property. I was using that to refer to the other types of counterfeiting they do. But you're right. That is counterfeiting. Sure, I agree. They do that.
So that's essentially why it's not a free market, because not everybody's actually playing by the same rules, and we're sitting over here paying the actual cost of ensuring that people can move their goods around the seas without having shit get fucked with.
Well, I think we've already agreed that that is a benefit for the U.S., though. That's my position.
And like I said, you'd be assuming 100% demand for foreign products by saying that. I'm not disputing that it's a benefit for people to be able to trade, but by inserting that is to somehow diminish the fact that the taxpayers are the one paying the actual cost, the American taxpayers, and a tariff would be a cost imposed by the government on a foreign company before they brought their product in the United States. Right?
It's not necessarily a foreign company. It can be on a company entirely based in the U.S. that just relies on imports from other
Would there
other
not have to be a
countries.
company established over there in that nation in order for the?
There
See,
would,
that's
but
the
the
semantics
company
I'm talking
buying
about.
the import.
You should
It's not
already
this.
know
No,
that
it's not at
that
all
company is going to
semantics.
have to be in practice a separate entity in another nation, right? I can understand that
No.
they're all kind of colloquially associated, but by law, right? They are separate entities, and that's the disingenuous part of, or it's either disingenuous or just not linking the parts together, right? Because Ford America or Ford Michigan is not Ford Mexico, right? So you understand the differences.
Well, I understand, but if Ford, my point was that there can be a company entirely based in the U.S. with no foreign counterpart. I'm trying to think of a company that'd be an example. Just like a small family business would be an example. A bakery, a small family bakery. But even though they're entirely based within the U.S., if they buy an import, they're still taxed on that. That's what a tariff does.
No, they wouldn't be taxed on it.
That's incorrect.
They would not be taxed on it. See, and that
That is
again with the language.
inaccurate.
Wait, how would they not?
How are
Wrong.
they?
If we
One,
did,
how is
if
the
we
American
did,
people? How is the American in your example taxed by
wait,
what you just said?
genuine question. If
If
we did
they
the
when they
proposed
buy an
60%
import,
across the board China tariff, yeah, and I have a small company and I import a random widget from China, would I not? How would I not have to pay taxes on that because of the tariff? That was just CTV.
The tax is going to be the same. The cost of the product, right, is what the company already had to pay before they could put their product on the American market, right?
well,
So
okay, let's just run through this
the end
example.
cost, the retail price of the product, right, is going to include whatever cost that
So
the manufacturer had.
I've not gotten into the selling end. So far I'm just buying the product. Maybe I'll resell it. If I'm importing something from China, would I not have to pay?
Slow down, hold on,
Would I
hold on.
not have to pay
I want to figure out
additional costs
exactly
on
where
that?
you're at. I want to figure out exactly where you're at.
I'm just trying to
'Cause
understand how, if we agree on how tariffs work.
the government imposes a tariff. Foreign company wants to bring product into American
Why don't you just use
market
my example? Yeah,
before.
I'm a small company. I want to buy a lamp from China. Do I not have to pay taxes on that because I'm buying it from China? Isn't that how it works?
What are you talking about? You see,
Nonfon, can you
What do you
help?
mean?
This is my question.
There's-
I feel like
Yeah,
the
wait,
question's
wait,
very
wait.
simple.
Let's just run through.
There's going to be your
There's a
basic
nice-
sales tax, your federal tax, your state tax,
And-
whatever.
and it
Stop.
the tariff,
That
additional
tax
tariff.
is going to be included with the end retail price. Whatever your normal taxes that you would have in
Before you
any other product, that's the only tax that you'll pay. The tariff is a cost that is paid by the foreign company to the government. Period.
Okay, wait. So let's say we have a bakery or let's say, in my neighborhood, there's this nice Mexican restaurant, okay? And then, some nice people own it, okay? It's a small family restaurant. Let's say they buy a tortilla from Mexico, okay? Who pays that tariff?
The company before they were able to bring their product into the American market.
Which company?
Whoever manufactured the tortilla.
No. The company that imports it pays the price. So this Mexican restaurant pays that tariff. When they buy the tortilla, previously it was $10, but now because of a 20% tariff, it's now $20. They pay $2 extra to the U.S. Treasury. That is how tariffs work.
That's my understanding too.
This is true. It's not my understanding. This is factual.
I'm glad I brought this up because I thought we were all on the same page here, but I guess not.
What are you trying to look it up, CTV? It's going to side with me. I'm correct.
No, a tariff is a cost that's paid by the company before they bring their product into the market. It's not
Paid
like
by
when
the
you sit
company
there
that
and
imports
you're
it.
sitting there, you're going to the checkout, right? It's not like they got it fucking broke down to where X percentage goes to this, and then like, oh, here's your tariff, right, on your receipt. It's not like a tax tariff. It doesn't work
no,
that way.
I agree with that. I agree with that. What I'm saying is that the
Right. So since you
Mexican
agree with
restaurant
that, then you
in
know
my
that the cost is
neighborhood
paid by the foreign company to the government. The cost is already paid there, and then the company has to figure out a way, if they choose, to put that cost back onto the consumer of the product by increasing their price.
Wait.
We already went over
the Mexican. The Mexican restaurant. Okay. The Mexican restaurant example.
We're still defining the beginning of the chain.
Tortilla company in Mexico, Mexican restaurant in my neighborhood. Mexican restaurant needs to buy tortillas from the tortilla company. When they buy the tortilla, who pays the tariff? Is it this or is it this?
Which product came over the national border?
The tortilla went over the board. The tortilla from the tortilla company.
So before the tortilla came over the national border, that tariff was paid. Period.
So these people pay the tariff. The tortilla company pays the tariff.
The tortilla company in the foreign nation paid the tariff before that product was allowed to come onto the American market.
So how do these people pay that if they don't have dollars? They're in Mexico. They have pesos. The U.S. Treasury doesn't accept pesos. They only accept dollars. They don't have dollars.
They're going to be doing a currency exchange, and then they're going to be holding U.S. dollars, which is exactly how it ended up happening anywhere else.
Oh, my God.
These fuck are
the
you
ones who pay
about?
the tariff. These people can't pay the tariff. They don't have dollars. And also, what if the U.S. government tells Mexico to pay a tariff? Why the fuck would Mexico listen? The U.S. government doesn't have any authority over Mexico. It is when these people buy the good with dollars that they pay the tariff. The Mexican restaurant pays the tariff. The tortilla sellers do not pay the tariff. They don't have dollars, and the U.S. Treasury has no authority over them. They can't pay the tariff. These are the people who can pay the tariff, and they are the people who do pay the tariff.
They'll be paying the tariff before their product's allowed to be brought onto the American market.
The Mexican restaurant pays the tariff. Do you accept or deny that?
Deny. The manufacturer of the tortilla pays the tariff before it's brought into the country. If that company chooses to pass that cost on to the consumer, then that's a choice that company made.
This is just plainly wrong. The person who imports it pays a tariff. So if a Mexican restaurant buys a tortilla from a tortilla company, the tortilla company doesn't pay the tariff. The U.S. company pays a tariff. They're the only one with dollars who can pay the tariff. And
You're right. Dollars don't exist outside of the American market. I don't even know how we're having any type of global trade at all. At this point, it's been an hour and a half.
Oh my God.
My patience is completely tested here, right? Like, I don't feel like we're making any headway, right? At all. So there's a fundamental.
I think we're almost there. I think we're almost on the same page of what a tariff is. But I think we don't have an agreement yet. But I'm curious.
I've been saying the exact same thing for an hour and a half, and I'm still not being understood, right? So the tariff is paid by the foreign manufacturer before the product comes into the United States, period.
This is not. Can we try this is inaccurate.
Practical example? For example, Trump did this.
I gave him a practical example. He doesn't understand. He's just plainly wrong. I like CTV. What could if I send you something from like the Tax Foundation saying you're wrong? Will you change your mind, or is the Tax Foundation wrong, or like?
Did they change the definition of tariff at any point?
A tariff is generally considered to be a tax on imported goods. The person importing the good pays the tariff, not the company selling the import.
I think that it could in one example. You think that that's the only way that they work? You don't think that they could say, hey, manufacturer, da-da-da? You don't think that they could say, hey, individual, if you want to do this and you have to pay this tariff?
I don't think
what authority does the what authority does the U.S. Treasury have to make a Mexican company pay pesos? One, they don't accept pesos. Two, they have no authority over them.
How about because they're the U.S. Treasury and this is the United States, and if that foreign country or foreign company wants to bring a product into the United States, then the entity that the people gave the authority to would be the U.S. Treasury. Jesus fucking Christ.
You're just plainly wrong. Tariffs are taxes paid by the person importing.
So since that's it, man.
We just look at
anyone can look this up.
I'll wrap this up really soon. That's cool, but I just want to. Cause I'm coming here pretty open-minded, but like I'm looking into like some specific scenarios. Like I think Trump put some pretty big tariffs in his first term on cars. It looks like if you investigate any of these cases, the people importing the car end up paying the additional costs. So maybe there's some unique scenarios where that's not the case, but I'm saying at least practicality in most scenarios, it seems like the cost is put on the people importing.
It's not even practically. Practically, usually the cost is the burden's on the consumer, but from an accounting perspective, the importing firm pays the price, not the firm in Mexico that only has pesos and don't have and the U.S. Treasury has no authority over.
Also, wouldn't that make sense? Like if we're trying to incentivize making stuff in America, like wouldn't that make more sense also?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. The whole point of the tariff is to increase the cost of imports. You can't do that by taxing U.S. firms when they import stuff. You don't do that by taxing foreign nations.
Any final thoughts, CTV? You want to wrap this up?
No, not really.
Do you want to keep going for a little bit, or are you?
This is just a reminder as to why I just haven't enjoyed having these kinds of conversations for a long ass time.
That's great. Wait. There's one thing I want to go over just because we didn't get to finish this last time we were on the Hippy Dippy panel. CTV, do you acknowledge that a current account deficit?
I'm not acknowledging shit. Let's start that. If you got a question to ask me a question, but I ain't acknowledging shit.
Okay, my question is a trade deficit equal to the current account surplus?
I don't know. You tell me. You're the language expert tonight.
The answer is yes. So
okay, good.
The trade deficit is equal to the capital account surplus. So do you think that U.S. firms? Other countries?
Look, let me ask you this. You're looking at me right now. Do you think that this continuing is somehow going to be improving the relationship moving forward, or do you think that you're just doing things to try to piss me off right now?
Well, I'm not doing anything to piss you off. I'm doing things to understand what you think and also see if you have a misunderstanding. I don't think so.
You've been you haven't been trying to understand a fucking thing I've been saying tonight. You've been trying to tell me how you think tonight. You have turned this into a debate rather than a conversation. It's been very frustrating for me because this is not what I wanted to do tonight. And what'd you do? This is not what the fuck I wanted. When I was sitting there talking to you in fucking DMs, I wasn't expecting you to come with a fucking moderator and all this other shit. And what did you do? So no, dude. I mean, from here moving forward, I don't really have anything else for you or you, ThePrawncess. I don't. Either one of you. Have a good one.
I mean, to be clear, he's gone. But to be clear, the reason we had this debate is because I added him on Twitter and said I'm happy to debate him, and also in DMs, I'm pretty sure we refer to it as a debate. But okay, he kind of also just said he didn't want a moderator. But okay.
Well, so I feel like it's kind of funny to say this is a very unproductive discussion. Also, I'm really happy. I'm really unhappy you brought a moderator. It does seem counterproductive.
Yeah, I don't know. Seems so. Yeah, I mean, if he said they don't want a moderator, I wouldn't have brought a moderator. But I thought a moderator helped. But anyone in chat, okay? In my chat and ThePrawncess's chat, CTV is just factually wrong about who pays tariffs. It's not paid by foreign companies. It's paid by the U.S. because obviously it is. Like I said, they don't have dollars to pay to the U.S. Treasury, and the U.S. government lacks authority over foreign countries. So they don't pay the tax, obviously. The Tax Foundation has stuff on this. Google Tax Foundation, who pays tariffs, or Google Cato Institute, who pays tariffs, or just Google who pays tariffs. So there's probably media articles about it too. So
yeah, even practically, that seems like it makes no sense. Let's say we want to incentivize U.S. steel manufacture, so we're gonna force it's just an example. We would force Mexico's government to tax the Mexico steel manufacturers when they're selling steel to the U.S. That doesn't really line up, I feel like. But yeah, to me, that came off as bad faith because I'm not a fucking tariff expert or economist. I'm just reading stuff on the internet. But it seems like, definitely everyone agrees with us that, the U.S. companies importing pay for it. So
I mean, there's two kind of arguments we were having. One was from an accounting perspective pays a tax. From an accounting perspective, it's paid by the person who imports the good, which is usually a U.S. company, right? But there's a difference between who, from an accounting perspective, pays a tax and who actually bears the final burden of the tax. So it could be that from an accounting perspective, the money leaves the corporation's account and goes to the U.S. Treasury. but the burden is actually on consumers because they increase prices to account for the fact that they've lost fucking money. This is why something like the corporate income tax might technically be money leaving corporations to the treasury, but also can have a negative effect on workers as well. It's something that usually Trump people really like to bring up because they're like, oh, Trump cut the corporate tax and that increased wages, even though that's debatable how much it actually increased wages. But yeah.
Yeah, they ran away afraid. I'd say definitely you won that one. They rage quit, so.
I didn't even, yeah, it's, did I tell you why we had this debate? I don't know if you were watching at the time. No, but it seems like you guys were on Hippy Dippy recently. Yeah, so basically, we were both on one Hippy Dippy panel, along with some other people. And, tariffs got brought, well, in full disclosure, I brought up tariffs because I feel like that's one of my strongest talking points, and people don't tend to have a good understanding of them. So I felt like that'd be a good thing to bring up. And I did bring it up, and we had some conversation about them. Epically owned, all the conservatives, okay? Total Nonfon W, total destruction, okay? And then, afterwards, I DM'd two people, CTV and another streamer called Pentuple, and I was like, hey, you want to continue the conversation on tariffs? I'm happy to, set up a time to do that. Neither of them replied. Later, Pentuple tweeted out, Democrats don't understand tariffs. And I was like, that's kind of dumb. And I quote tweeted him, and I said, oh, really? Let's chat about it and see who understands them better. That started a Twitter shitstorm, okay? As much as my, small Twitter size is capable of starting a Twitter shitstorm, where me and Pentuple had a lot of back and forth, and eventually he was like, I shared a clip from the debate where I was arguing with him and CTV, and he's like, can't believe you cut off CTV. And I was like, I mentioned CTV, and I said, I'm happy to also debate CTV if he wants to. So that's why we're here. So.
Well, it sounds like.
By the way, any of these conservatives that want to debate me on tariffs, Pentuple, check your DMs. Offer still stands. Gibbs, if you're watching or see this, I quote tweeted you on Twitter too. Let's debate tariffs, okay? Any of these people, okay? Come on. And we can do it.
Some people in my chat disagreeing too. I was trying to see if any of them would come up, but I imagine there's not going to be any takers. I do want to tell you something. I'm trying to arrange a debate between you, Econo Boy, and some other people I've been interacting with.
Yeah.
Econo Boy's down, so I'm trying to get those two other people we met on School of Thought.
Oh, great. Yep.
I don't have their contact directly, but I'd love to have maybe another discussion. They sound pretty knowledgeable as well, so I'm curious how that would go.
Yeah.
At least more knowledgeable than some people I've interacted with.
And more knowledgeable than most conservative people who think that tariffs are paid by foreign companies or foreign nations. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.